Hello everybody, welcome to the Redmen TV and your latest Liverpool Transfer Podcast. I'm Dan Clubb, that's Jamie Cranford, that's Peter Kenny-Jones. We're here for the next half an hour, 40 minutes, however long we see fit, to talk about some of the news and predominantly all the transfers talk from the last 7 days since we all last sat here, and of course more exclusively in the past 24, 48 hours. Let's go through some of the chat first and foremost. Baldy fan, tough times with content creators. We'll also be here if you want to take a couple of weeks off. Yeah, I like that. And it fits nicely because I am off after today for a week. It will be Chris Pajak in this and every other seat in the building for the next 7 days. So strap yourselves in from that. Abdu, you're very welcome for me reading that comment, by the way. I'm glad it made you happy. We'll be talking about Gordon and Diaz and stuff like that in a moment. Nigel Smith's got his wall steak slice and a coffee. Come on, I'm ready. Yeah, come on, I'm ready.
Can't argue with that, can you?
Literally impossible to argue with that. Yeah, absolutely. A fan of a steak slice, Jay?
And yeah,
big time. And the best.
Needless to say, yeah.
Okay. Oh, nice. Actually, yeah, thanks very much, Ashley. Appreciate that.
I was thinking there's some quite. You're looking relatively tanned. Some fairly white pins on over
what are you trying to say?
This side. You know,
what were those ice creams when you were kids?
Mini milk.
Mini milk.
A couple of mini milks, but they're like a chunky milk, aren't they? Really?
Not so mini milk.
No.
Okay. Anyway. A Redmen TV on your birthday, Essex Copper. Good, happy birthday, mate. I hope you have a good one. As is said and echoed by Acid Bronson. Okay, I'm feeling very big of Redmen TV. Right now, I am actually going to.
This is nice, isn't it?
Start.
Yeah. Let's do this for half an hour.
I'm actually going to start talking about it here now. Sorry, the small talk is over. This is my last show of the week, and it's been a week and a half for me. So yeah, forgive me for being a little bit excited. So first and second most, how are we doing, guys? Okay.
Very good, yeah.
All good.
I feel a bit self-conscious about my legs, but
like I'll complain. Sound. I want to start off with, lads, if you don't mind. I want to start off with the press conferences from yesterday. Obviously, Arne Slot and Curtis Jones. We're not going to delve too much into the weeds when it comes to the details. I'll come to you first, Peter. Just generally, what did you make of Arne Slot? This is the second time I think I'm right in saying we've heard from him sort of in front of the press anyway. What did you make of it? And one of the key takeaways and one of the probably most important lines for majority of the fan base was when he said it will be a surprise if there were no signings. That was the one that really got the juices flowing in the fandom, it felt like.
Yeah, well, I think it would be a surprise. I don't think anyone's against it. Obviously, I think people are growing, maybe in frustration. I'm not too frustrated, but about the fact that we haven't done much yet, so for him to appease them with that comment probably was a good move. But I think what he does is different to Klopp, and obviously I feel bad because you're comparing him, it's impossible, but he gets a question about him every time he speaks, which hopefully eventually will stop for him as much as for us just reading and hearing the same thing. But I used to watch Klopp's answers and they go on for 5 minutes to any question, and then you watch Guardiola, you watch Arteta, and it's like a 5-word answer and they're done. And he does seem to be more on the shorter side, but giving less away about us, there's nothing wrong with that either. So it's he just seems really, really calm and relaxed, and he doesn't seem to be. I doubt he's on Twitter watching the fume that's coming his way or the club's way, because he just seems so calm and on top of it all. But yeah, another positive interview.
No, I think so as well, absolutely. Yeah, he exudes that self-assuredness, I would say, and as you say, that confidence. And he's not a soundbite guy, and you're right, Jurgen Klopp was more than just a football manager, and we might have to live in a world whereby Arne Slot is just a very good football head coach, as he's titled, and that's perfectly fine. But we struck gold with Klopp. I think we're all aware of that, certainly from a media perspective as well as an actual football one, because as I say, he just delivered time and time again. He was box office quite often. Arne Slot may not be that, but what he might be, he might just be boss at getting results on the pitch, which ultimately is what it's all about. Jay, I'll come to you from the Curtis Jones angle as well. A lot's been made of some of his comments, I think it's fair to say, but the general gist of what he was saying was just how excited he was and how amazing Arne Slot was, but moreover, he just couldn't wait to get working with him, it felt like, because he referenced a couple of little things, sort of tactical wise, and how the midfield is the heart of the side, and we know that games are won and lost in midfield, but what did you make of Jones' sort of overall persona? Again, just seemed really, really up for it.
Yeah, I thought it was great. Nice to see him so enthusiastic. I think it's really good sign for him that he said he had 6 weeks off, but he came back after 4. It's nice and keen to get in there, to get to know, given that he didn't go to the Euros, get to know the new manager. I can see why maybe things could be interpreted as a little dig, but I don't think he was intentionally doing it as a dig. But I think, he's obviously feeling a bit more comfortable. We've always known that he is a guy that I think naturally coming through the youth teams and stuff like that wanted to express himself more on the ball, wanted more time on the ball. You see that with a lot of young players. They kind of have to be coached, that discipline, and because at the top end of the game, when you're playing Man City or you're playing in the Champions League, you give the ball away in the central midfield, it's curtains in 30 seconds. They're down the other end, and it's and they've scored. So I thought it was interesting. I was saying to you before, could that, in terms of possible transfer news, the 6 type stuff, if we're going to be having, he didn't just say for himself, he said Slot likes his central midfielders to have more time on the ball, to do more with it, to look for more passes and things like that. So I was thinking, well, if that means that we're going to have, the further two, if we're going to play 2-8 or whatever, if they're going to have more time on the ball and they're going to be allowed to express themselves more, that would say to me that we would need a more traditional defensive midfielder, because otherwise that's a big risk, isn't it? If you're letting your 2 central midfielders do more with the ball, there's more of a chance of them losing it. So I think that could mean that we are more likely to sign a more defensively minded player.
100%, yeah. And I think a lot of sort of the noise in the round, our transfer activity, is pointing more and more towards that direction as well. Those reports earlier on the week saying the holding midfield of the 6 situation is one we'd definitely look to address. But I think you're right in terms of the Klopp-Jones stuff, for what it's worth, from my point of view, because there's no reason for Curtis Jones to come out and sort of be negative around Jurgen Klopp. They had a boss relationship certainly from the outside looking in, from what I could see. He gave him his breakthrough, he gave him his chance, he gave him large runs of games as well when Curtis Jones was fit and in form. So it became common knowledge, and it was obvious to see, because you touched on the academy there. He was the lad in the academy. Get the ball to Curtis and watch what he does with it. That was different when he came into the first team, and he had to adapt his game, and I think he's done it pretty well, to be honest. But I actually think Slot's style and his philosophy will suit him more, so it's perfectly normal, perfectly natural what he said. And as I say there, the fact that they've worked so closely for so many years doesn't lend itself to Curtis Jones now being derogatory about Klopp. If it was Ryan Gravenberch, who's been here for a year and he's never really, been given a proper run in the side, you'd almost understand those sort of comments, but it isn't, so whatever.
I think it's just, he'd say stuff like, oh, he's got such a great attention to detail, and he didn't say, but also Jurgen did as well. But we all know there's no way Jurgen Klopp hasn't got a great attention to detail.
No. He said he was a legend as well in the middle of it. They've got a great bond. That bit wasn't clipped. It's the bit
it was
where
so innocent for me. It shouldn't be in the services in any other way. But at the same time, I also understand it, because I literally heard what he said. Okay, let's do some transfer stuff then, which is why we are sat here. The major talking point, I think, certainly in terms of the latest news from Liverpool's standpoint, in terms of incomings, has been Anthony Gordon once again, guys. Because David Lynch, friend of the show, great guy, I know David well, has been speaking, and he has said on Anthony Gordon, I think that's the one that has a real chance of being revived, maybe later on in the window. Because that contract situation is there, that leaves Newcastle in a weak position in terms of negotiating, even though they've got past all their PSR trouble that they've got. We knew about that, obviously, when that mad weekend happened a few weeks ago. The player would desperately love to play for Liverpool, pretty important, and there's all that reported interest in Luis Diaz. Now he goes on, just scroll down a touch more, there we go. Now that interest in Diaz has to become something. There has to be a bid come in, and it has to be right for Liverpool to make a sale. They're not just going to kick him out of the door. But if that does come together and those ingredients are there, then Anthony Gordon is a player we know they admire. So then, there's a lot of moving parts there. Let's get that out there straight away, Peter. I'll come to you on it, mate. There's a lot going on. Obviously, we know about the Luis Diaz stuff, but what's so fascinating about that to me, and there was obviously the rumoured Saudi interest in Luis Diaz, obviously there's PSG, there's been Barcelona sort of floated, but every time someone speaks about Luis Diaz, it's always that, really. If Liverpool aren't going to actively look to sell him, however, if a bid arrived, it wouldn't immediately be sort of knocked back. And I find that fascinating. And I guess it makes perfect sense what David's saying there. If the money was to arrive, let's call it 50 million for Diaz, Liverpool will consider that, and their attention will immediately swing to Anthony Gordon. Do you sort of agree with all of that, and do you make that right? I mean, it's so difficult, but is the appetite for that sort of thing to happen, is that there for you?
it's not like something I want to happen, but like, you know, as you say, if it is a position where Diaz gets offered a fee that they think is acceptable, then I wouldn't be against him being the option if Diaz has to go type thing. But I wouldn't. It's pretty similar to how it sounds at the club are. They're not pushing Diaz out the door. He's a great player. I do think that, we've talked about it a few times. I do think of the forward options we've got, I think he's possibly one who has like the least room to maybe kick on. I think this is his ceiling type thing. I'm not saying he can't, and hopefully he does, but I can't see him like going and having 20 goals, 20 assists next season. So I can see why they think he's good enough to play for us, and if we get an offer, we'll listen to it. Anthony Gordon obviously is an interesting one. I think a couple of years ago, maybe people weren't up for him being around, but then he had a great season. He had a good interview with Gary Neville as well, which I think did change a lot of people's opinion of him. Yeah. And then he likes Mo Salah and he likes Gerrard, and it would wind up Everton fans. So there's a lot of reasons. And on top of all that, I think he got more goals and assists than Luis Diaz did last season for the Wales team. So you put them all together, then if that is the scenario we're left in, I wouldn't be upset with it.
No, absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot to like about it. There's a comment there from, I think it's Free Django, said 50 million is too low for Diaz in his opinion, especially if PSG are offering Anthony and recently went for 80. I actually agree with that, but the reason I use 50 is sort of the benchmark is because I know James Pearson, the Athletic deal sheet, a couple of times mentioned that figure, and that sort of maybe is the starting point, but that is a number that Liverpool seemingly wouldn't dismiss out of hand, which I think is really interesting. Peter mentioned sort of the numbers there in the round of two players. Jay, I'll come to you on in a second. Luis Diaz last season, 51 appearances, 13 goals, 5 assists. Not bad, I think it's fair to say, but he's 27 now. Anthony Gordon, meanwhile, up at Newcastle, you'd have to describe them as a not as good a side as Liverpool. 12 goals, 11 assists. So similar, but again, playing for a worse team, less appearances there, only 48 appearances, much, much younger. I've got to admit, he's only 23, I've got to admit, like, if that situation we just discussed that David sort of outlined there, if that was to become a possibility, I'd be up for it.
Yeah, I would also be up for it. I think I agree with you about maybe Diaz's ceiling in terms of, I feel like I feel harsh on these players. It gets younger and younger. We're like, oh, he's 27. He's obviously not old, but when you think about when we signed Salah and Mane, by the age of 27, 28, they were pretty much the best in the world, the best in Europe in their positions. I'd love to see Diaz absolutely tear up the Champions League next season, but I can't see a 20-goal all-comp season and a 10 assists or whatever. So I would potentially be up for it. I've always liked Gordon I say I've always liked him. I mean, one of his great strengths is actually he's a little rat in the box, winning penalties, and like, you know, he's always been good at that. So you hated to see it when he was in a blue shirt. Likes a bit of needle as well, doesn't he? We saw in that Newcastle game. That kind of started the fractious thing where Van Dijk ended up getting sent off, you know. So he loves all that. So it's, you know, when those players are playing for you, you love them. Yeah. My big sticking point with, and I see what you're saying about the fee, is we'd all love to get 75 million. Who's going to pay that? PSG, yeah. They've lost Mbappe. Would that placate their fans enough? It's like, oh, we've signed a major European talent from a European giant. Maybe it would. It would. But Barca's the one that keeps coming up, and as we all know, their finances have been absolutely up the wall the last few years. I just can't see where they probably have to pull one of their levers, wouldn't they? They'd have to pull a big lever.
They've got enough of them.
Yeah, I don't know how they would finance that, but I can't see it happening. And then I'm thinking, like, say Napoli sold Kvaratskhelia, would they come in for Diaz? But then would Diaz? That's probably a downwards move, a sideways move at a push, you know, like something like that. I just don't see where the options are for him, really.
No, I think you're right. I think that's where we're kind of at now. That is the sticking point in amongst all of this, and that's kind of been, again, it's kind of been the party line, and Dave's almost reiterated it there in what he said. Like, it all hinges on Luis Diaz and those bids arriving, bids that they deem as being acceptable, because let's live in a world whereby Barcelona did offer 35 million. Liverpool would laugh that out the door. You know what I mean? That's a non-starter, that conversation. But I do think when you get up to around the 50 and beyond mark, just because you mentioned it there with sort of Mane and Salah, and you're absolutely spot on. Like, Diaz, he kind of is what he is now. He is pretty much, to finish the article, like, are you going to see a dramatic improvement in his output, in his all-round game? Perhaps not. Listen, you might see a slight one, you might see a gradual one over the course of this season, but realistically, I'm not sure. He had a bad injury as well in amongst it, so in like the past 18 months. So I don't know what more you get out of Luis Diaz. Anthony Gordon, in terms of his numbers, and somebody mentioned a point a moment ago in the chat, I've gone off it now, so forgive me, but like about his output against the big six as well, that was exceptional. I think I'm right in saying he scored against all of them. So he's doing it, and he's not just doing it, he's doing it in the biggest games. So that's another tick in the box. And he's 23, I come back to it, like his ceiling is higher right now. The potential, the room for development is higher, and he's already nigh on matching what Diaz is doing. So for what it's worth, to sort of round off, I think there's a genuine conversation there, personally. And not to say, and I'm in a similar boat, I wouldn't be kicking Diaz out the door and say, we've got to sell Luis Diaz, because I don't think that's the case. But if that situation was to arise, I'd be open to it, like Liverpool would. Just finally, Peter, I'll come back to you on it.
Yeah.
Jay mentions there, and correctly so, where's the money coming from, essentially. I think, because obviously Barcelona are going for Nico Williams, PSG, who knows what their next move is in terms of the winger situation, stuff like that. I don't think we're too far removed from just looking straight at Saudi Arabia and the Saudi Pro League and going, it might have to come from there.
Yeah, well, if they offered it, and that's the thing. And actually, what's also important is how much they offer, because I wouldn't, as much as we've all just kind of said we'd have Gordon, I wouldn't have Gordon in place of Diaz and, say, having to spend another 50 mil if they're trying to get 100 mil. So it is very much dependent on how much they offer. And if we do only get 50 mil and the club are happy with that, who are you going to get for 50 mil who's better than Diaz, I think, is the issue. You know what? His problem, Diaz, is, I think if he scores in that City game last season at Anfield, I think we're all holding him as the person who helped us win the league. I think it was that important that if he'd have gone through and took one of those chances, but maybe that's why we are looking at making a change, because he hasn't got that very 0.1% that could make him as good as Salah and Mane, and I think it is that fine margins, because he did kick Mane out of his position. They were both playing there at the same time, weren't they? So he can be that good, but I think we've seen what he is.
I think so as well. And like I said, when I always hark back to when he first arrived, he was just electric, wasn't he? In the final and stuff like that, he was honestly unbelievable, but hasn't really gone from there, I think it's fair to say. Okay, let's move on. Interesting double transfer story, this one, coming from Give Me Sport. I think this was yesterday, I think I'm right in saying. Liverpool are considering whether to lure Pedro Neto and Neto and Ait-Nouri away from Wolverhampton Wanderers. It was mooted as a £98 million double swoop. We'll go through these individually, Jay. I'll come to you first on Pedro Neto. Reds have reportedly held discussions over Neto deal. It says here the Portuguese footballer's agent is expected to push for a switch. Cards on the table. I really like Pedro Neto, and I think adding a sixth choice forward, potentially one who could play as a bit of an understudy, maybe long-term successor to Salah, is really important. However, Pedro Neto ain't that guy, and he ain't that guy because of the injuries. He's, in terms of his footballing ability, yeah, all day long, but you've only got to, I'll do it in a second while you're talking, you've only got to go into transfer market and go into injury history, and you're completely like, no, not for me. You cross him off your list, your supercomputer, whatever, your Excel spreadsheet, can't happen.
Yeah, and that unfortunately is the beginning of the end of it, because we've all seen just how good he can be. He was fantastic against us last season. He's so skillful on the ball. But when you can't rely on a player like that, especially if, you were talking there about the possible understudy situation with Salah. I was talking to Steve the other day on the news show about Bakayoko, and you think that makes a bit more sense because he's 21. It'd be a smaller fee. If, I don't think he'd throw his toys out the pram if he's not playing every week because Salah's there, I mean, we'd all love if you could get Neto and you could wave a magic wand and say he's not going to get a bad injury for the next 3 years, then of course, and, he could... We don't know what's going to go on with Salah, but he's certainly got the quality to hold down a place in our front three, but I just don't see it it doesn't feel very FSG to me. It's a Premier League to Premier League signing, so they're going to want top dollar. You might get him in, and then 3 weeks in, he's out for 2 months, and and then everyone will say, "I told you so." He always gets in. So I personally can't see it as much as he's a wonderful player.
No, I agree, and his track record suggests what you just said there is almost not nailed on, but very likely to happen. Again, I come back to it, brilliant footballer, end product, scores goals, particularly in the Wolves side that haven't been particularly free scoring down the years. He is the X factor for them. Very dynamic, and that kind of comes with the territory in terms of the injuries as well. That probably lends itself to each other. Presses really well, got a lot to like about the player. Only 24, Portuguese international, of course, but just injury ridden. Like, I'm on it here on Transfermarkt. Like, it's bad. Like, it's not bad up until a point. You see that 1920 muscle injury there. You can almost, if that was it and it stopped there, you'd be like, okay, a couple of little niggles on the way, you can deal with that. But then bang, knee injury 52 games out, ankle injury 27, and then a recurrence of a hamstring problem 11 and 12. I mean, unfortunately, almost for whatever the money, especially the way Liverpool operate in terms of the resources and how we need to go about our business, albeit we like buying Wolves players. Again, Pete, this is just a non-starter because of those last 4 bad injuries.
Yeah, what Jota's like. I don't think we can afford to have to carry any more strikers, and obviously that sounds harsh on Jota, but because when he comes back he guarantees you the goal. As much as Neto is very good, I don't know if he's going to be as impressive with his output as Jota is, so it's just a big risk. And sometimes it's worth taking the risk if the money's right and if it's a cheaper deal. And we've seen players who have been in the squad and haven't played that many games, and maybe if you have 2 or 3 of them, their quality added together is better than what the sum of the money that you pay for them is. So it could be worth it in that sense. But when you're saying there it's £98 million touted for both of them, it's not exactly a great deal, is it? You could get Anthony Gordon, or you could get them. It seems like Gordon's more likely to have a better output than him. So yeah, it's I wouldn't go for it unless it was a ridiculous deal and you think we'll take the risk.
The sad thing about that Transfermarkt thing, that it reminds me a bit of Naby Keita's, which had some crazy. I think it had malaria on there, involved in a coup. But there was everything was happening to Naby. So and we all know how frustrating that got with Naby by the end of it. He's again on his day, great player, but I just can't see it.
No, famously injured once by a different type of grass, I think, Naby Keita. I did a podcast the other day, aside from Redmen, it's like a separate entity, and it was like, the question was, if you could go back in time with the benefit of hindsight, what transfers would you undo, whether it be incomings or outgoings? And Naby Keita was top of my list.
Yeah.
Because he came with such a big build-up, a big hype. Obviously, we waited 12 months for him to actually arrive, the transfer fee. And he's shown glimpses along the way, don't get me wrong, but for the actual, what we got from him, it was nowhere near value for money. And value for money is what Liverpool are after. I guess every club is after, really, but Liverpool in particular. And to round off on Pedro Neto, unfortunately, because he is a boss player, you just won't get that from him, as much as he has a lot to offer when he's fit. Let's deal with the Jayden Ait-Nouri stuff then, Pete. Left back, obviously, 24 years of age, Algeria international. I like a lot of him. I like him at Wolves. I think he's a boss player. I think he became quite integral to Gary O'Neill's system, and a lot of what he did good was built in around him. Athletic, very technically gifted, good going forwards. I think he's good enough going backwards as well. I think an interesting wrinkle to this, actually, obviously we know about the Tsimikas situation and what could pan out there. Andy Robertson's injured, actually, right now. And a lot of the conversation around the left-back area, some people have centred it around the fact that Robertson seemingly can't stay fit for the full season anymore. Definitely didn't do last year. And when we find out last night that Robertson's now going to miss the entire tour, that immediately starts alarm bells ringing a little bit. So talk about that and what you make of the potential of Ait-Nouri coming in and fighting for that place, I guess.
Yeah, but you want 2 good left-backs to be in your squad, and Tsimikas has shown that he can be that possibly sometimes, but I've never been maybe as keen as everyone has, and that's not in the sense that I don't think he's good enough or don't play him. I'm just not necessarily sure he's of the same quality as Robertson. So to maybe challenge that, we're saying there about Salah needs competition and someone coming through. We've got Conor Bradley on the other side. Obviously, we saw with Luke Chambers and Scanlon and stuff like that, there was chances for left backs last year. But I think the Atalanta game when Tsimikas came in and he just looked, he was horrific. And I don't mean to be that harsh on him, but he was really poor. So from then, really, and I wouldn't be against him being sold and that we have to replace someone. But then, as you're saying there, if Robertson's injured, that leaves you with 1 left back and you're throwing him straight in. But if you are going to do that, then a player with Premier League experience who a lot of people are interested in, he seems to be a bit of a Twitter player, doesn't he? Everyone, because you watch him every week on Match of the Day or whatever, said what a player he is, go and sign him. And yeah, I wouldn't be against that at all. But it's all a risk, and you never know how much it's going to be. Do they want to get rid of both, just one? How real is it? Whatever. But the prospect of Ait-Nouri coming to Liverpool, yes, that definitely. And Robertson, I would always start. I think he's unbelievable. But you are going to have to start planning for life without him when he's injured and life without him when he goes.
100% that. And for me, it's not a conversation around, just casting off Andy Robertson saying, your best days are done. Listen, he may well be, let's have it right. In terms of playing a full season of 50 games, this is what Liverpool hope to compete in, of course, year in, year out. But it is about that, who comes in to replace him. And not only that, who's pushing him, I guess, as well. And it feels like the time for Tsimikas to be that, to potentially oust him, to potentially sort of be the heir to that left-back throne. It does feel like that's gone a little bit. Jay, I don't know where you're at with it. Do we need a better quality challenger to Andy Robertson now, and therefore a better quality replacement, successor, whatever?
I don't mind Tsimikas. I think for what he does as a backup, and we saw before he unfortunately got injured by crashing into Jurgen Klopp, I thought he'd started. I agree with you. There were some of those Europa games he came in and he was awful, but once he'd got 4 or 5 games,
you reminded me. Was it Toulouse he played away? Was it? That was eye-opening.
That was a grim night. Yeah. I think we were in here for that, weren't we? Yeah. So, I don't mind him for that. I think it would be quite an elite club move, quite a City-style move of going, we're going to have a bloke who's not finished by any means. He's 30, as you know, Robertson. Yeah. So he's not got loads left, but he could still have another 2-3 years at the top, or maybe 4, you never know. You could have a kind of master and apprentice situation where by the time Robertson is 33, 34, if he wants to move on and play for someone else, or if he just wants to, if Ait-Nouri's then the guy and Robertson doesn't mind being a senior figure, then that's fine. The only the possible issue with it, what we were talking the other day about how the money gets divided. Yeah. Is it going to be, if it's going to be a 50 million sort of fee, I could see them saying, well, we've already got a very good left back and a decent left back, and we've got about 5 youngsters. We've got Owen Beck, we've got Scanlon, we've got Chambers. I thought maybe somebody like a Calafiori, I know he's not going to be coming now, but if they got a centre back who could do a bit at left back, that might take some of the burden off Robertson, and then that centre back could then be groomed to possibly replace Verge. I thought they might maybe go that way if they were going to do something.
They still might, but yeah.
They still, but yeah. If they came out tomorrow and slapped it down for Ait-Nouri, then I'd be very pleased.
Yeah, no, I agree. Absolutely, I agree. And I think he could be that sort of point of difference in that position whereby all of a sudden we do have to have a serious conversation, and Arne Slot's got a serious headache about who is the first choice. Andy Robertson's been exceptional for Liverpool Football Club. Absolutely exceptional. Somebody a moment ago mentions these people we're talking about aren't the players we need for the level we want to be at, i.e. winning the Premier League, winning the Champions League. Well, we signed Andy Robertson from relegated Hull for £8 million, and he was a large factor as to why we went on and won the Champions League and Premier League. So I'm not quite sure that rings true. But you've just made a point there, Jay, and we're going to move on in a second, so we won't dwell on it. But like you said, that Andy Robertson's 30 and he's potentially still got some miles left in his legs and on the clock. My only issue with that is he's picking up little problems here and there now, and the way in which he's gone about his football, like absolutely all energy, relentless, and where I adore him for it. But how much has he taken out of his body by doing that under Klopp? And that's rung true for a few Liverpool players now. You look at Jordan Henderson at one point. He might have just had a little bit of resurgence more recently, perhaps. Fabinho was absolutely done in, as we've seen with our very eyes. So the Klopp style and the Klopp way can get the better of a lot of these players, and maybe Andy Robertson's going to be the latest one to fall foul of that. Hopefully not, but who knows? And I think having a proper left back in and behind him to challenge and potentially take over would be smart for Liverpool. City like business, as you mentioned a moment ago. Okay. I didn't say at the top, in the chat, put some names in if you want us to discuss a topic. I'll try and pick one out over the next 5-10 minutes before we go. But we're just going to run through some outgoings now. But yeah, throw some names in you want us to talk about, people we haven't mentioned as of yet. And keep them serious, not like, Fanny Schmeller, the skier from the chase and stuff like that. We had all that yesterday.
She's not coming in now.
She won't be coming in now. We had like Safe Hands, the goalkeeper. You know what I mean? It was good. Yeah. I like it. I'm all for that. But right now, let's try and finish.
What could Fanny Schmeller do if she came in? She's a skier.
I'm not going to comment.
Some sort of fitness coach.
Yeah, maybe. They have gone quite innovative in their coaching departments. Yeah, they've got a set piece coach coming in as well, so maybe she's a set piece coach.
To like weaving. Yeah,
because they're always jostling and getting the shirts pulled, so she could just weave.
Get it in.
Get Fanny Schmeller.
Get it in. Get Bradley Walsh in as well.
Okay.
For morale. Yeah.
Great minds. Okay. Anyway, forget everything that's just happened.
Don't do that.
We'll trim that out. Don't worry. On a more serious note, let's end the week on I say that and then I brought up this name I've got to try and say. Anyway, Fabian Mrozek, young Liverpool goalkeeper, has signed a new contract with Liverpool and he's joined, I'm glad you brought it on the screen because people can see how difficult it is, IF Bromapolgana. I'm alright with that. Yeah? Are we good? Are we happy?
Finnish?
Bromapolgana?
Finnish?
I think Swedish.
I'll carry on.
Yeah. Olaf Melberg is their manager and he wears sliders, shorts and like an old Adidas top on the touchline, so he'll do for me. Good luck to him. I like him, by the way, for what it's worth. Thanks, Acid. He said that's pretty good pronunciation. Nice one. He's a decent young keeper. Got a bright future ahead of him, so I'll be interested to see how he goes in the future. Next, we'll do Jayden Danns next, because I think this is really fascinating. Pete, I'll come to you and Jayden Danns. Yep. Quite a lot of talk over the past week or so about him and the potential move to Plymouth. That seemed to take a bit of a step forward yesterday when Lewis Bauer, who I think we're all kind of aware of, thereabouts, knows the academy stuff very well. He claimed that move was edging towards its completion. If it does come to fruition and Jayden Danns does join Plymouth Argyle on that season-long loan, good move?
Yeah, but I think we discussed the other day as well. It was first coming out today. Yeah, but I think so. I saw quite a bit of negativity saying, anti-Wayne Rooney opinion, and who would have thought that from Liverpool fans? But I think, in terms of someone to learn off as a young Scouse forward, you can't really pick anyone possibly better ever, never mind who's currently managing. So, a permanent move, maybe not the best idea, but that's not what's on offer. It's a loan, and yeah, I think you could learn off him. He needs to play football. He's got the size, hasn't he, to be going to get beaten up. I don't think he needs to play against 16-year-olds at the academy in front of 5 people. He needs a full stadium and some old centre-back trying to kick him, and hopefully he comes out on top and proves what he did at Anfield last season. He was scoring goals, looking calm, won a cup for us. This seems like a great step for him. So yeah, I'd be happy to see him make that move. Yeah,
I 100% agree with you, by the way. And I am one of those 5 people watching him at the academy, and I think he's superb. But you're absolutely spot on in your assessment. He is already beyond that, not just in terms of what he can offer in terms of his technicality and his ability on the ball, but that physicality is imperative, because there's been loads of boss youngsters who sort of come through the ranks, recently and previously as well, but they've never been able to go out and get that first team exposure on loan because they've not been physically up to it. I think Danns is ready. I think he's ready for that move, and having him, people may sort of want him to replace Núñez and stuff like that, but having him just in the first team squad doesn't feel enough. He needs to be getting his minutes under his belt, and I think a move away would be boss. And again, the Wayne Rooney point is I get why people are sort of not nervous, but not sure on it, because it's Wayne Rooney for a start. Look at the clubs he played for. That's not a good fit for Liverpool, and his managerial credentials don't stack up either. But as you said there, in terms of having hype and how to deal with that as a Scouse forward and knowing where the back of the net is, there's nobody better. As much as we don't
he's been in his shoes, hasn't it? I'm guessing an even higher profile. And I don't know if he'd have any time to teach him a bit of finishing, but that would be nice. He could say, stay off the pints and stay away from the grannies.
I knew that was coming. I knew you were going to say that.
Sorry. Well, he's, they were pitfalls for young Wayne, weren't they? You don't want Jayden being splashed all over the tabloids.
No, so sound advice.
Jayden Grands.
Nice.
No? That would be the headline, wouldn't it? Jayden Grands.
Right itself, isn't it?
Yeah.
There speaks a journalist.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's all I learned.
Let's move on from Jayden Grands. And I don't know, I'm not doing this. Anyway.
Is this devolving into nonsense now?
It is at this point, yeah. It is.
Sorry.
Right. I want to address Fabio Carvalho just quickly, because there's been a report from Football Insider suggesting that Liverpool may be willing to sanction a loan exit for him. I'll be honest with you, Pete. I'm a little bit surprised if that was to be the case, because for me, somebody mentioned make or break a moment ago for Núñez in terms of the season, and for what it's worth, I think it might be. I think this is the season. It has to go right or otherwise. I think these next 2 weeks are make or break for Fabio Carvalho at Liverpool. Like, I don't see the benefit really in keeping him sort of on the books and just loaning him if he's not going to be part of the plans. I think he stays and he is part of the plans, or we sell him personally. Yeah,
no, that's it. It's unless like you can't get the offer and that's the only way people want to buy him or something. But yeah, I'd be half tempted to just reject everything and give him half a season and say, this is it, you know what, I'll give you the few chances, this is your chance to shine. You know, I think he wanted to go as much as me. Well, I'm not sure about the club, but he was happy to go. I think this summer of Jurgen Klopp was still manager, so it's on him to prove. You know, he's got a chance after playing at Hull and not getting much football in Germany. He's now got a chance to play for Liverpool. Like many other people who he shared the dressing room last season with would have killed to get in his position. So go and take that chance. That's all you need. I think, you know, as much as you said the next 2 weeks, I think it's harsh to say you've got to impress us in the summer. I'd say you've got to have some minutes. You've got to prove that you deserve them, and fingers crossed it works out for him and us.
Okay. Did you a similar boat, Jay, or do you think slightly differently?
I think I was a bit surprised myself, but I think it's a big move if he does get a loan. Any ideas on possible destinations? Or
not muted whatsoever, to be honest with you. No suggestion of anywhere. Because
I was really disappointed for him, not by him, because I don't know what went on, but that Leipzig loan was a disaster. It looked like, I thought, oh, that's a really good club. He doesn't necessarily have to play every week. He'll be playing in Europe. There's a path there from them to elite football, like we've seen with the likes of Szoboszlai and stuff like that. So, and then that was a bit of a disappointment. Did saw like odd glimpses of him at Hull, but then that was kind of the same level that he was at when we signed him. And then, you know, so he's still got a bit of time on his side, but I think we don't want to be having a conversation in January where it's like, oh yeah, he's made 5 appearances and scored 1 goal, because then I think that probably means the idea of him being a top level player is probably going to go. But hope if he does go on loan and he absolutely smashes it, then great. It might not necessarily be over for him at Liverpool, but it's looking slightly it's looking iffier as time goes on, I think, for him.
That's right. I think it's precarious, and what you just said there in terms of the January situation, whereby he's played a handful of games and contributed little, you know, with all due respect, I think that's almost nailed on what we would be going on into what we'd be talking about if that was to be the case. Because you mentioned the Leipzig loan as well. The problem with the Leipzig loan was, and Liverpool face a very similar problem now, is where'd you play him? And he was quite lucky. I say he was lucky. He was relatively fortunate at Hull that they played in a system that suited him down to the ground, and he was one of their best players, so that he could build and accommodate what they were doing in and around him. That isn't going to happen at Liverpool. Like, we're not going to have Fabio Carvalho and make a 10 because it's Carvalho. Really good player, but not of the level whereby Arne Slott's going to look at Dom Szoboszlai, Curtis Jones, Harvey Elliott, Alexis McAllister and go, yeah, you're all sound, but what about this Fabio kid? Like, again, I really like him. I think he's very, very talented, very technically gifted, and he's got an eye for a goal, clearly. His numbers at Hull were boss. He managed to really sort of turn and recaptured his form. But again, at Liverpool, I'm just not convinced. I don't know. We'll see. Ultimately, you know, we're going to watch the game later, the Betis game tonight. And we might all change our opinion on him, and he might be, you know, the best thing since sliced bread, but as things stand right now, I don't see the value in loaning him, and I'm not sure he's going to be sticking around to make a big impact either, but we'll see. Positivity says is his best chance, and I think a false 9 would kind of suit him, but I don't think Liverpool are going to be playing with false 9, and yeah, kind of this as well.
He played it against Preston, didn't he? So it could be that we see that again, but I know that's different. I'm not saying that matters. I know that's why, but yeah, I think, you know, maybe if that is the chance, he gets in the summer again now.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, and listen, I would love to be wildly inaccurate in this, and he's just boss for Liverpool, and he does stick around, and he does play 15-20 times between now and January, chips in, happy days, because I was delighted when we signed him. We waited 6 months, we nearly got him on the deadline day, had to wait until the summer. Boss, real talent, as I say, over the moon, but realistically I just don't see how it works personally. Luke Chambers is going back to Wigan. I will come to you, Peter, for this.
Okay. That's dramatic.
Yeah, it was a little bit. Sorry, I was trying to decide in my head. Good move, I think, for Luke Chambers. The pecking order and the myriad of left-back options Liverpool have mean that someone's got to go, and Luke Chambers is the first. Fair enough?
Yeah, well, I think it's good to let him go back to where he was. It's stability in terms of, it's the same team, you'll know where he is. Liverpool had such a bad record last year with loan deals. I think, we talk about Carvalho was there. There were so many of them who seemed to go out and then come back and wasn't working. And Reece Williams ended up playing in our reserves, and it just didn't seem to work. So if you've got one that does work, and we're already talking there about Robertson and Tsimikas, Chambers isn't going to play many games, if any, at Liverpool this season, especially with no Europa League football either. So I think it makes sense. From what I remember, he did quite well as well. He was getting a few assists. He was getting involved going forward as well. So yeah, that could teach him. And he's had a little bit of a chat with Slot. I'm sure they'll tell him what he wants from a left back. I'm sure Wigan will be told that as well. And obviously he's gonna have to play their style, but overlapping attack and fullback, if he can do that at Wigan, you've got a chance there for even when Robertson does go, he's young enough to come and help us.
No, I agree, and I think it's a good move actually for him. I went to watch Wigan last week because Calvin Ramsey is there as well, playing right back for them. Calvin played really well actually. Just good to see him play football ultimately. But I think Chambers, Joe Maloney's Wigan side get the ball down and play a little bit as well, certainly for League One level. But what I was most impressed with Chambers with last season whilst he was there was how he coped with the physical side of things, because I went to watch him when he played Stevenage. I've said this a couple of times this week, so sorry if anyone's heard me say this before, but they were lump it forward and test them, and he stood up to the test. Like he really did. He passed with flying colours. So yeah, I think it'll work well for him, to be honest with you. And it's interesting how it's 6 months and he might come back in January and then go elsewhere. That's an interesting little sidebar.
If he needs to look anywhere for inspiration, Conor Bradley went to Bolton, won Bolton's Player of the Year. Scored a few outs from outside the box and all, and then look where he is now. So he didn't look ready when he played those few Europa League games, but good opportunity for him to go play some proper men's football. But if it's in a decent passing side, then that's great as well.
Better. Yeah, 100%. Just finally, we've got two more youngsters we need to wrap up before I speak about the viewers' topic. Let's just take a few minutes as well. Ian Doyle reported yesterday that both Ben Doak and Cade Gordon could be on the way out on loan as well. Jay, I'll come back to you. I'm going to get you to pick which one. If you could keep one of them, who would you keep around?
Well, I feel like Doak could do more in a Liverpool shirt. I'd like to see him more. In terms of his raw ability, I feel like his raw ability is higher than Gordon's, but then I'd also, if he got a good championship loan or something, and he absolutely tore it up, then I think that'd do him the world of good. So, I'm sending Ben out. I'm sending Ben out. I'm keeping Cade.
Yeah, Pete.
Other way around. Sorry. No, I just think Cade. God, his injuries have been terrible. I know Ben Doak's had a really bad time of it, but I just think Ben Doak maybe because I'd send both out, but I think Gordon needs a season of football because he's either going to find out he's not good enough, he always gets injured, or he gets his form and he gets his confidence back, which I don't think he'll get by playing bit parts in the academy.
It would probably do him the world of good, actually, because Gordon's already had that little taste of first team action, but we're going 2 seasons ago.
He missed
a long way back now, aren't we?
Yeah, he missed 19 months of footy at one point because of injuries.
I don't think, and it's at that age, I don't think it'd do him any good to the end of the season. He's played like 3 games and he's done a few League Cups and he's come on with 10 minutes to go in a Champions League game when we're winning 3-0 or so, he could do with going and getting a proper season as well himself.
I agree. Both got loads and loads of potential, I'll tell you that. For my part on it, it was suggested by Ian that they both could end up going if sort of the right offers were there as well. We should say that, and that would be probably my preference if I'm being honest. But I would also like Liverpool to sign an understudy to Salah because these two are that right now. Yeah. So maybe a little bit of Harvey Elliott.
That seems to say. Sorry, I don't
think that's what it
was because I thought that when I saw it, that's got to mean that we're going to get a right winger, which has been touted a lot. And if you're going to get a right winger who's going to have small amounts of minutes because Salah's playing, then they're only going to be even more blocked from their football. They're not going to play. So
exactly that. And it does feel like there's a time very early on last season when Doak was involved in like Premier League stuff and Europa League stuff, definitely. And I thought to myself, I think I remember saying to Andy Kelly down at the academy, I was like, we're not going to see Ben Doak ever at the academy again. He was like 17 at the time. That's how highly regarded he is and was. And he possesses just that raw, electrifying pace, doesn't he? Just ask Luca Dina how quick he is. And if he can beat you, like he is frighteningly good. And I kind of want him and a couple of us to go on loan as well, because I want to watch them play footy all the time. So that would be a positive for me.
Sorry to keep interrupting. It's that him. It does seem quite a shift that a lot of them are looking to go on loan, which weren't that season, which could mean we don't win the League Cup against Chelsea with 4 players playing, but it could also mean that they all go and kick on. It's a deliberate change, isn't it? So it's going to be interesting to see how that works. But yeah, Ben Doak, I think, could be fantastic. So I'm really excited about him, and I hope he goes somewhere good where he just plays football and doesn't get injured.
100. The injury thing's massive, and I compared him to Michael Owen the other day. Obviously, he was plagued by injuries at some point, which really stunted where he was at in his career, although he had a pretty decent start, I think it's fair to say. Somebody, Dak Taylor, mentions Rooney, talking about Gordon. Yeah, you're right. I think that was during their derby time together, wasn't it? He was a big fan. And Kate Gordon's a good player as well. He's also massive now, which came out of nowhere, which is kind of where the injuries stem from. Okay, just finally, the viewers' topic came from Daniel Wezzy. Apologies. What position do you think will come in? I mean, hopefully 2 or 3, let's be honest. But I'm going to ask you both your priority position. If Liverpool were to announce a signing at half-time tonight against Real Betis, what position would you like that footballer to play in? You're panicking, so I'll come to you.
People are going to hate that, that's why.
I think a forward would be my least.
Okay.
I can't make my mind up between centre-half or 6. I think I'm going to go 6. I think I wouldn't be massively upset if we went with the centre-halves we've got. I mean, I wouldn't be massively upset. Well, I think a 6. Yeah, I'm gonna plant my flag in the ground. That's if I could pick, that would be the position.
Okay, Pete, you're gonna say something mad here.
A goalkeeper, which maybe you wouldn't consider, which I apologise, but Adrian's gone. Don't not trust Janos, but it's a massive risk even when Alisson gets an ankle injury for 4 weeks, which he seems to do at least once a season. Kelleher seems to want to go. I think Adrian just said he's already spoke to Kelleher. He's thinking of going. There was the Athletic, and then not trying to plug myself in any way, but I spoke to John Achterberg, and you did as well, and he also said, I hope he goes. He deserves to go. I think we all kind of think that, and we could be left in a position where Kelleher goes later in the window, where Janos is in. He's just been lobbed in the halfway line by Brady against Preston. I know nothing against him, I just think we need a good second choice goalkeeper in there, because that's the only thing I'm genuinely worried about for next season. That is a massive drop, I think.
Listen, yes, absolutely sound reasoning. I can't argue with it. And I think another sort of bit of impetus behind him going potentially the fact that the Republic of Ireland manager came out and said he needs to go, and he's going to play football somewhere. So yeah, I think you're absolutely spot on, and your prediction could well come true. However, having said all of those words, might be a 6. But, just a 6. Yeah, I spoke on a deep dive to Josh about this week. I think that is our most pressing need, personally. I'd like some other things to happen in the round it, don't get me wrong, but again, come back to the question. Tonight, if you offer me one, it would be that guy.
I'd like 6 centre half and another attacker. Yeah, if we could do those 3.
Yeah. And probably the replacement for Kelleher. But that only needs to happen when Kelleher goes. Spot on. And the forward for me would have to be predominantly right wing. I'm not even bothered if it's stylistically similar to Salah. I'd like it. Bakayoko fits into that category, by the way. But it has to be a right wing capable one. There's no point signing another left winger.
But Diaz played there last year, did well. I think Jota could play there. I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm not saying I want it to, but I just think that's the only position which, yes, you are. Kelleher hasn't gone to. I can't say it truly, but I think it's the only place where we do, the drop is huge. That's all I think.
I would argue, but I haven't got the time.
I win then, that's fine.
All I'd say, I'm going to do it. All I'd say anyway is Salah at his peak is, above and beyond anywhere my arm can reach. And I think as much as I like Ben Doak, and as I like Kate Gordon, that's kind of, and you mentioned Jota and Diaz. But I don't love either of them. And who knows, we might need Jota centre forward and Diaz left wing. All of a sudden you can't play them out there. So I would be getting in that
That's
guy.
my number 2 position, right wing. Yeah. If we sign 2 people at half time.
Well saved. Sam, thank you very much. That's massively appreciated. That's me done for the week. I will see you in about 8 days. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for getting involved. Take care. Bye.